Good morning, everybody. This is People of Substance by LemonSkies. I'm Olga, and I'm excited to introduce my guest today, Erik Tomalis. Is it Tomalis? Am I saying it right?
Tomalis. Yep.
Okay, there we go. So Erik has a pretty cool title, which you can talk about yourself. He's the chief evangelist for Virtuous. So we'll unpack what that means, but welcome.
Hey, how are you, Olga? Hi, team. How's everyone?
So I think you win a prize for the greatest backdrop on the call that we've done.
It's not bad at all. I'm traveling for the holiday weekend, and all my entire family is in the house, all enjoying breakfast and doing all the things. And I was like, I'm coming outside and doing this outside. It's a nice morning. So
this is fantastic. Well, thank you for taking the time. So let's just jump to it so you can join the family breakfast and not missing out on that time. So your background, before we get started, how did you land in the nonprofit sector?
That's a fantastic question. It goes back to like one of the thoughts I had was a friend of mine. She did a survey about 2 years ago, and she presented her report a year ago to a larger AFP chapter out west. And it's interesting that when she did the survey of all the executives, that the majority of folks actually responded that they fell into nonprofit. They weren't called to do it. They weren't like asked to do it. They didn't go to college to learn about doing it. And 20 some years ago, I felt that calling. And so my wife and I both were graduates at Duquesne, and we both wanted to go off to be in law and business school. And I made a deal with her. I was like, we both got accepted. We both wanted to go become attorneys. And I was like, you go first and I'll go second, because we both can't go into debt together. And I went to go serve a nonprofit organization. And when it was my turn 3 years later to switch, my wife looked at me and she's like, you don't want to be an attorney. Stick with where you are. You're happy where you are. And that was the long-term trajectory of serving nonprofit and being a community builder.
So she did you a solid.
She totally did me a solid. Totally. 100%.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of anthropology, some philosophy majors. We have, English majors sometimes, although English major, in my view these days, is great. If you can communicate and write, it's an excellent skill. So
100%. Well, and it's interesting is I graduated with a political science degree of all things, as well as business. So I had an entrepreneurial idea, as well as wanting to like understand like government history and politics and be able to help support one another. But there's a social side to that. And being a kid who grew up in Pittsburgh, I watch Mr. Rogers every weekend, and taking care of your neighbor. I'm a Boy Scout and grew up in the program. So it was all about that community, neighborly, helping others. All of that together. It was a calling. And I'm glad I did it. And I'm absolutely continue to be that fundraiser, nonprofit leader, if you will.
So at some point you made the shift towards a little bit more tech side of nonprofits. And, I think it's been such an interesting evolving space where, a couple decades ago, what if we sent an email and asked people for money? What would happen, right? So to technology and data kind of being huge drivers now. So can you talk a little bit about what trends you're seeing in tech space that nonprofits should be really paying attention to?
That's a fantastic question. And, I think about it 20 some years ago when I started learning how to fundraise, and, it was interesting getting out there and raising money. And I remember the first day I took over my nonprofit organization, our board chair came to me and was like, Erik, we need to raise $15 million this year. How are you going to do it? And I was like, I had a thought about it. I had a business plan. I put together a project. I put together a plan. And the easy answer 20 some years ago was hire headcount. I wanted to hire full-time employees, a bunch of gift officers. I gave them a pool of prospects to who to visit with. I prioritized it. They built those relationships. But that's 20 some years ago, before this great migration, great resignation, and everything else. And, one thing I like to share with nonprofit organizations and leaders is today, if I was in that same situation, I wouldn't hire headcount, because it's so hard to retain staff. It's hard to keep people happy. It's hard to find the right people that are passionate about your mission. But I would lean into the data side of, making sure my house is in order, making sure my systems are automated to be able to thank and appreciate and do things at larger scale, instead of doing this mass marketing communication and treating everybody the same. Why don't we talk to them personally, like all the for-profit companies are, like the Netflix and the Amazons and the Googles? They all are listening to us. Are all these for-profit companies, things that we can learn from them. Those are the technology trends that I'd like to incorporate into nonprofit leaders, because we have to do more with less. That was the line I heard all the time from my executives in nonprofits is, how do we do more with less? And because it's just going to get more and more less in the future, as you're seeing with a lot of these trends. And we just need to be more efficient.
Well, and you're right to say that Netflix of the world have certainly set certain expectations for us, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Amy, I joke about this a lot in a lot of my presentations. Is everybody knows I travel a lot, and you know, I'm a Marriott guy or a Hilton. Those are Marriott's my primary, but every Marriott I'm in, the television says "Welcome, Mr. Tomalis" on it. You know, Netflix knows when I finish a TV series, it's going to suggest a series based on my personal preferences. And we should be doing the same thing with donors, because giving is intrinsically personal and it matters. It's their disposable income. They want to feel thanked. They want to feel appreciated. So we need to teach and connect with them at that personal level, rather than just saying, hey, let's just, like, I hate the phrase spray and pray, but that's really what it is. And it's because it's nonprofit leaders, and I was victim to it too, is it was easy. It was the only thing that I had at my disposal. Was like, all right, I need to raise, I don't know, X amount of dollars before the end of the quarter or end of the fiscal year. Let me just send out a mass direct mail and ask everybody for the same amount. And
spray and pray, churn and burn, you know, whichever.
Yeah. It's hard, you know.
So what's interesting is you talk about technology and, you know, kind of the expectations and how do we provide this tailored experience to our constituents. I guess one question I have for you is, I'm seeing a lot of companies, and your company provides CRM tools. I'm sure I can't speak to the full suite of offerings, but I'm seeing a lot of tech providers really leaning into more strategy and conversations. I don't hear you speaking about set of features. I hear you speaking about nonprofit trends and nonprofit strategy. So can you speak to that? Are tech companies becoming really more of strategy drivers? Is that just part of the marketplace?
You know, it's interesting, Olga, you know, I mean, everyone knows I go to a lot of events, a lot of shows, a lot of conferences, even in the exhibit hall. You know, and it's interesting. I've been in that space, been in the nonprofit space a long time, serving on the front lines with nonprofit in my organization. And I guess I was the unique one in our group where I always went to the exhibit hall first, because everybody who are in those agencies, those technology firms, those for-profit companies serving nonprofits, they have all the knowledge in the world. They have the experience. They have more experience from nonprofits, because a lot of those individuals come from the nonprofit and they've already failed, right? They've already succeeded, and they learn from their failures, and they're trying to figure out how to be able to help each other. And I think that's where you're seeing more and more, especially with social media and activity and marketing and communication. There's more content today, but I definitely believe that a lot of our technology and our agencies, we all want to help support nonprofit because we've been there, we understand it. I know at Virtuous, we are, I make the joke internally all the time, we're not tech bros. We are nonprofit leaders. We have a whole bunch of old major gift officers or program officers or volunteer program leaders, and executives like myself. We have a whole host of different people. We've done it, we understand it, and now we get to inform our technology on how to make it easier for nonprofit leaders to grow generosity. So I think that amongst all the entire industry.
So it's a different perspective. It's not about tools, it's about strategy. You alluded
to don't get me wrong. There's some people out there that are going the other way, that are the tech bros and the car salesmen and everything else, but they're just the small few compared to the general good of our industry.
They're just not part of my squad, so that's
correct. Correct.
You alluded to this, that you go to a lot of conferences, and you go to a lot of conferences. And I have to say, I don't get FOMO, because I'm like, wow, I don't know how he does that. But you're definitely kind of traveling back and forth and seeing you at all the different events. So one question that I've been dying to ask you is, first of all, how do you maximize the value of those events? So you show up, how do you take advantage of it? And then how do you not burn out?
It's interesting. I had that question a couple of weeks ago about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how far am I burnt out, right? The travel, the being away, that constant activity. And I was very genuine with this gentleman who asked me this. It was in Chicago, so I remember. And I was like, I'm like a 2, maybe a 3. And I'm not even close to feeling that way. And really, it's because, one, I believe in Stephen Covey's 7th habit, which is sharpen the saw. Taking the time and redoing and preparing yourself and regrouping and making yourself whole And that's a lot of, like, you can see where I am. I'm right now inside of a pool with my family and trying to decompress and focus on that. I'm not looking anywhere else where I'm going. But in all honesty, I have a really good network. I have my great personal network, my family, and then my family around me takes care of our house and our people and our dogs and our everything around us, as well as my professional team that, you know, helps me on the front end of the events, as well as the post event, and as well as makes my job a whole lot easier. So what you're seeing is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole host of stuff underneath the water that there's a huge amount of team around it. I have the great pleasure of serving Virtuous and being out there and being our face and helping nonprofit leaders. I get a personal passion out of it, as you guys can probably see. And really, the reason why I leaned into this role and I'm excited about it is, for the last 20 some years, I used one system. I used one technology. And I was my warm, comfortable blanket for so long. I never looked at new technology. I never looked at anything else. I was like, hey, this is what I got. I'm happy with it. Let's just use it because it's the tools we have. And to be fair, it's one of my biggest regrets. And so I've made it my personal mission to share, hey, talking to nonprofit leaders, maybe Virtuous isn't the right fit for everybody, but maybe we should look and do an audit, and we can help you in driving that direction of what's important for you, because technology changes so often. I just take it under my personal mission that I want to get out there and share that story and help others as much as I can. And it's been fun. And, you know, we've got a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of places we can continue to go. And we got to visit with the donors, you know, like I'm a former, and I'd share this with you before, Olga, but this travel's been easy compared to where I was. You know, when I was in the nonprofit space, I've made a little over 4,500 face-to-face visits in my career all over the United States. I would get on a plane. I think one of my best years was like 415 visits in 1 year living out of Pittsburgh for our capital campaign. And I think it was a 75 or 80% close rate of those major gifts. But I had to go through Charlotte or DC or Chicago just to go visit all our donors across the country. And like, this for Virtuous is so easy. It's so much fun. You know, it's going to events and having experiences and connecting with leaders, and it's fantastic. So,
well, talk to me about your organizations that you worked with. I know you've had some involvement with St. Jude's and Boy Scouts. So the question I have, and I think it's partially a reflection of what I've thought about recently, how have nonprofits you worked at shaped you as a person, and kind of when we leave a nonprofit and the cause and the mission, I just have to believe that some of it stays with us. So that's the question I really wanted to talk through with you.
There's a good question. I'm actually going to pivot it a little bit to a different direction. Is like, I actually sought those organizations out. You know, the 4 or 5 different nonprofit organizations that I served are ones that have personally molded me to be the man I am today. And so I started my career working for Sigma Nu Educational Foundation, which is, frankly, it's one of the largest fraternities in the United States. I helped raise a good amount of money for their educational foundation, led the educational foundation, but it's the only fraternity based on the concept of honor and from the military background. And I believe deeply in that, as being an honorable person. Growing up in the Boy Scouts, you know, I was a Tiger all the way to Eagle. I wanted to go and serve. I served on the volunteer board and the leadership and the executive board for our local council, and then ended up leading our fundraising and marketing efforts there. St. Jude was a personal passion of mine, where my goddaughter was a patient at St. Jude, and I wanted to give back something from our family to help serve that mission. And if you know, if your child is sick, you send them to a children's, but if your child is dying, you send them to St. Jude. And Anna's death day was about 13 years ago, and we want to support that mission. Yeah. And then the health system is this. Honestly, I've had a lot of health issues in our family, and I wanted to help build something here at Allegheny Health here in Pittsburgh. And all those missions are all personal passions of mine. So I could be able to connect with donors, tell them my personal story, and I have a whole host of different areas I can go with all those stories. But I don't know if there's another nonprofit that I've been passionate about. I mean, I continue to give, I continue to support, but I think it's been opposite. They've helped me be me who I am today.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting because, and I love that you've really gone after the causes that were near and dear to your heart. And it's, you know, so fortunate that the stars aligned to be able to do that, where I have found that, you know, obviously you work for causes that you feel good about and you connect with. But at the same time, I feel like some of my experiences, Special Olympics in particular,
Yeah.
have shaped me in the process. Like I felt good about it. I liked it as a cause, as a mission. But just really having left, I didn't really leave, as I'm a volunteer for the organization now. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I mean, I still keep in connection with a lot of those leaderships, a lot of the individual donors. It's interesting. It's, with all the amount of visits and the people I've met throughout my career, I still continue to keep in touch with a lot of them. The purpose is different, like it's, more advisory or friendship or brotherhood or whatever it might be. But it's all about this community of doing good.
Yeah. So you mentioned to me in our previous conversations, I know you still volunteer with Boy Scouts. I mean, you started, if you were a tiger or cub, you must have been quite young. And to this day, you're still involved. Can you talk about what you do?
Yeah, so I'm an Eagle Scout, and so in Western Pennsylvania, we have our Eagle Scout. We call it the NISA, National Eagle Scout Association. I'm vice chair of our committee there, where honestly, it's a bunch of alumni, air quotes, who are Eagle Scouts that we want to help these young men and women to be able to be better stewards in our communities. And we have a whole host of different programs that we operate. One of the ones I actually really enjoy is what we created in Pittsburgh. It's called Eagle Career Day. And a lot of these young kids are always being pushed to go to college, right? Like, and maybe that's not the best answer. And so what our Eagle Scout chapter does is we call it Eagle Career Day, where we bring in a community, someone from the community college, someone from the university, someone from the military, and then Pittsburgh's very big into trades. We're very big blue collar, whether it's carpenter or steel or whatever it might be. We have a rotation where they can go listen to every single presentation for 20 or 30 minutes with their parents, which is fantastic, for free, and help them guide them if they're 13, 14 years old, saying, hey, do I want to go into college? Do I want to go into trades? Do I want to go into the military? Whatever it might be. And it gives them a little bit of options to do there. There's a whole host of other things that I volunteer for locally, whether it's our local mission or hospital, some children's advocacy groups. I chair a couple of events for our local nonprofit called Verland, but absolutely just want to continue to stay active in our community and helping others. So I think it's part of our nature.
What was your Eagle Scout project?
Ooh, I'm an overachiever, so I had to do a couple. I did two. So I redid an entire preservation area and then a historical building in our community. So I had to do that. Yeah. I'm very big into history and community. Like, for example, where I'm at right now is my grandmother's house in Camp Hill, PA. And it is the northernmost point of the Civil War. So the Confederate Army actually came to this house, lived in it, and fought from the north down to Gettysburg, and the north fought from the south to Gettysburg. So very big into history and where we are right now too.
That's very cool. So for the final question that I have for you, because I want to make sure you get to breakfast, and it's kind of a fun one. So you and I have been connected. We've gotten to know each other virtually, in person. What are some things about Erik? You can give me, let's say, 3 that we may not know about you based on your profile, things you put out, things you share at conferences, speak to. Like, do you play bagpipes? Do you have, a pet raccoon? We're looking for, what are some Erik things that we're not familiar with?
What are some Erik things? So I don't put it out there a lot. I am a diehard Duquesne basketball fan. And so that's where I went to my university. When I was in college, I went to every basketball game, became friends with a lot of the players, got to see the whole thing. Been season ticket holder for 15 some years now. My we have a name on a locker. We have a name on the building. My wife and I go to every single game. Where the uniqueness is where, and that's just like normal, is we sit center court, front row, right behind the media. We have 4 seats right there. And Duquesne's Division I. It's in the Atlantic 10. We actually won the A10 this year. First time ever gone to an NCAA tournament in 47 years, which is super exciting for us. It was my sports highlight of my life. I'm a very professional person, and everyone sees that publicly. But when I'm at a Duquesne basketball game, it's the least professional you will ever see me. And last year, I think I got 2 warnings from the referee, and I got kicked out of 1 game because I am passionate. I want to be engaged with our team and support them as much as we can. And my wife and I, we love it. So it's one of our passions. So
That's a fun one.
yeah.
Well, thank you for being such a wonderful guest today. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you, and I appreciate you taking the time off when you're hanging out with the family. Thank you. And
Thanks
I
so
look
much,
forward
Olga.
to seeing you in a few weeks.
I'll see you in a few weeks. Thanks so much for having me. This has been fantastic.
Thank you.